welcome to the Economic Briefcase on Camnet TV. Today with you is me, as usual, Luwinda Awazoka, the host for this program, and with me is...
Japalo Noah. Good evening, Doc. Good evening, viewers.
How has been the week?
The week has been good. A bit busy, but it's coming to an end tomorrow. We thank God.
We are going into the long weekend, so
yes.
Let's hope that we will be blessed with financial blessings, so that we should be able to navigate the
long weekend.
The long weekend.
I'm into that.
Yeah, talking about the long weekend, we need to understand. We'll go straight today. We have a very interesting guest for you. Before we introduce our guest, first, we'll, as usual, first do a recap on what is transpiring on the foreign exchange market and the commodities market. Mr. Ndapao, over to you. How has the Kwacha fared?
How has the Kwacha fared against the four major currencies? So the Kwacha closed selling at against the dollar, selling at 17 Kwacha, 48 Ngwe. It closed selling at against the pound at 22 Kwacha, 4 Ngwe. It closed selling at 19 Kwacha against the euro, closed selling at 93 Ngwe against the rand. Selected metal prices delayed by a day. Aluminium closed selling at $2,141.50. Copper closed selling at $8,268 per ton. Zinc closed selling at $2,348 per ton. Lead closed selling at $2,130.50 per ton. Tin closed selling at $27,500 per ton. Nickel closed selling at $19,855 per ton. Crude oil prices. WTI crude closed selling at $70.09. Brent crude closed selling at $74.53. So, Doc, we can see that the Kwacha is, I was expecting it to go a little bit lower.
It's on a seesaw, up and down, up and down. Today, before we forget what is transpiring on the financial markets, today with us in the studio is a man that needs no introduction. We are not even going to ask him who are you, where do you come from, when were you born. This is a person everybody in the country knows, and this person is we can interact with them by sending text messages. We'd like to apologize today that our phones are not working, but please send your text messages. We'll be able to read out your text messages and we're able to interact in that particular manner. Today we are discussing debt restructuring and basically overall the performance of the economy. And there's no other person that can better discuss this topic than Honorable Bob Sichinga. Honorable Sichinga, it's a pleasure to interview you. At least I'm going to write it in my diary as Naila was Sichinga.
Good evening to you, Doc, and also to you, Njapao. And also greetings to our viewers that are watching us at this particular point in time. And thanks for having me on the program. And let's see what we can do to see how our country can go forward. So I'm glad to be here.
So just to let you know, viewers, that I know this man very well. He used to run a very profitable farm for ZCCM. These are the people. If you want to know how we can enhance the performance of ZCCM, Honorable Sichinga is, but that will be a topic for another day. I don't want to preempt.
No, but it's all part of the economy anyway.
Yes.
It's all part of it. We're trying to move to agriculture, and I think that's important to look at what has been the models that have been done before and see how they've worked. And also, having spent some time as Minister of Agriculture, I think it's important that we examine that, and I think it will be a useful discussion. To discuss how do we migrate and make agriculture such an important area.
Honorable Sichinga, the country has been engulfed in some euphoria,
right,
over the debt restructuring. And you've been, in government, and you've been in quasi-government institutions. How should Zambians understand this debt restructuring? What is it all about? And
okay. Thanks for the question. But let me just say that I'll probably discuss this more as an accountant.
Yes.
That's my profession. I'm an accountant by training. But I'll draw from the many examples we've had, and definitely my experience within government. I have chaired some of the committees in Parliament, for example, Public Accounts, Economic Affairs and Labour, Education, Science and Technology, reforms of Parliament, and then we've also looked at the government assurances that are given, the Budget Committee. I've served in all those committees, so I think I've got a fairly good idea. But more than that, you talked about the mining industry. In ZCCM, we had gone through a similar situation of structuring debt when the two mining companies, the RON Consolidated Copper Mines and the NCCM, which is the SICHINGA Consolidated Copper Mines, were joined in 1982
To form ZCCM.
to form ZCCM. And each company had its own debt. And most of it was foreign debt because of the financing of the mines. And I was appointed Group Financial Controller for Accounting and Audit, Honorable Hachpuka. Then we were both working there as accountants. He was Financial Controller, Group Financial Controller, responsible for Treasury. So we had to go throughout the world to our creditors in London, in Paris, in New York, to put that debt together and restructure it, because the two companies are different debts, and now they have to come to one at the same time. So to some extent I've gone through that. The other thing is that during the time of the 2005, when I was in Parliament as the Chairman of Economic Affairs and Labour, we still went through this similar situation under HIPIC, the Highly Indebted Poor Countries. HIPIC is an acronym for that. So I've got a good understanding of what it is. In answer to the question that you have raised, what is debt restructuring? And here I think we should define which debt are we talking about. We're talking about public debt that is owed by our government, the Republic of Zambia government. Normally the management that handles that, the office that handles that, is the Ministry of Finance, and now the National Development. So they are responsible for ensuring that they know what the debt is. And also for the viewers, I think for the benefit of the viewers, it does not matter which party in government contracts that debt. It does not matter. Once it's contracted, it's contracted. And it becomes public debt of the Republic of Zambia. And so the debt we're talking about is predominantly was contracted during the PF regime, starting from around 2012 up to 2021, when the government of PF lost its position and that was taken over by the UPND. And maybe for the benefit of the viewers, again, they may not have been aware of this. This morning there was a briefing by the Minister of Finance, Dr. Msokotwane. He was briefing us about the structuring and what had taken place. Unfortunately, I missed the first part when he was briefing, but we had the benefit of the Secretary to Treasury, who elaborated on what has taken place. So what has happened is that the country owes money to both local companies and foreign companies. How about local companies? What is it that is owing to local organizations? Mostly banks, individuals that have bought treasury bills, okay, or people who are suppliers to the government. That is debt. The bulk of it would be in treasury bills. But then the government also owes outside the country, the various institutions, both. When we say bilateral, we are talking about government to government. Okay, in other words, two contracting organizations. But there's also private debt, which is owed by companies, the large companies, for example, ZESCO, owes companies outside the country huge amounts of money for their projects. So that is part of that particular debt. Then there is that debt which is financed government to government, not necessarily private sector, but government to government, whether it's the government of India, government of China, or government-owned institutions in these countries, or the famous ones that we that we started with, the Eurobond that was owed because the Zambian government in 2012 went to the open market and contracted that amount of money. So this is the set of public debt that we have. According to the government, and I've not been in government since 2015, so I'm basing it on what has been provided to the general public. I am not privy to the details inside other than what has been provided to us as a briefing. Our colleagues at Ministry of Finance have indicated that the total debt that we're owing to the outsiders in terms of foreign debt is standing at 17 billion. And this is what they have been struggling with to try and bring about a cohesive arrangement, because as you probably know, we have not been paying towards those amounts that we are owing to the foreign governments, but we have been paying the locals some interest as it were. So that needed to be agreed upon. You cannot keep, when you borrowed money, you can't just stop and say we're not going to pay anymore. So this is the issue of the debt restructuring that we're talking about. According to this morning's briefing, of that 17 billion, only 6.3 billion is being addressed, because that is one which is in bilateral, as well as some other extended debt, according to what they call the official committee that is looking at this. If you want, there is a committee that is sitting on behalf of all the creditors to us, because when they lent money to us, they are creditors, we are debtors. Okay, so that is what has happened, and that's what we're dealing with. So I want to state here that from the briefing, I think that it is important for us to give credit where credit is due. And in this particular respect, I want to say to President HH and the team at Ministry of Finance, it is very good that we've come this far by having a framework. And please, this is very, very important for our viewers to understand. And sometimes when people debate on our social media, I am usually surprised at just how misleading it is. The truth of the matter is this. The truth of the matter is this. That particular debt is only part. What has been agreed is not yet full debt rescheduling. When we say to reschedule, it means you are now going to look at the tenure of that debt. I'm talking about tenure means the period. The date when you contracted, when you're supposed to finally pay it, that's the tenure. There is also the terms that you use, the provisions that you make, the terms on which you agree and say on such and such dates you will pay towards that debt to reduce it, or there will be the so-called one shot. You make a certain payment periodically, and normally it will be more than a year when you are paying that. It is both the capital, or what we normally say principal, that is paid back, as well as interest that is paid back. So in this particular case, when you talk about the debt, you are referring both to the capital, the principal, as well as the interest that has accrued on that particular debt. So when you say we are going to reschedule, it means you are going to change the terms, you are going to change the tenure, you are going to even probably negotiate, as has happened in this case, the level of that interest, as well as the amount, whether there's any, what they are referring to as haircut, okay? Haircutting like yours and mine, you reduce, it means reducing something. In this case, reducing the debt that is owing on each contract. So what our colleagues have done, both in President and has been involved, and I think it's very good that it provided leadership in this case, and also the ministry itself. What they have done is to agree on a framework. Please understand this. It's a framework they've agreed on. The general terms that will apply to any debt. The biggest challenge that remains for us, and this ought to be explained, is that we now have to agree with each of the creditors taking their individual debt. Whatever has been agreed on is that the debt payment, or the interest that is going to be paid on that debt, will not exceed 2.5%. Okay? And that this is going to give us a 3-year period. It's called a grace period. In other words, we will not pay during that particular time until it kicks in, and this is obviously going to 2026. As you know, this is 2023. So that's what is going to happen. And at that point in time, we have to start paying back. And the question is, how much do you pay on each of debt that is owed to these lenders that are due to us. That's what has been agreed, and the principle of what has happened has been agreed, and the basis upon which they've agreed this has also been spelled out. But the major job is to look at now the individual loans. Okay, that's one, and I will talk about 6.3. How about the other date? What happens? For example, the monies that have been paid by local banks in buying treasury bills, which Bank of Zambia floats on behalf of the government, that has to be also addressed. However, in this case, according to that framework, it has been agreed that that will be excluded. Why? Because it means that if you bought treasury bills, let's say, Doc, you bought a treasury bills because you're a very rich man and you're a doctor and so on and so forth. So you have a lot of money, you bought the treasury bills. If they had been included in this, it means that there would have been a cut, it would have been haircut.
Yes.
They would have been reduced, and that would have created upheaval in the marketplace, in the financial marketplace. So those have been excluded, and I think that has been a very wise decision. But for me, what is critical is not even what we agree, both for the 6.3 and even the balance, another 11 billion that has to be addressed in $1 billion. For me, it's how do we go forward, and maybe this is something, Doc, we can interrogate. Okay. Why? Because if you repeat the same mistake over and over, we had the problem already occurring under HIPIC. Different circumstances, different organizations that were involved, but similar. It got us to that level. The debt was written off. Literally, I think the balance was around 500 million, yes. If memory serves me right.
Yes, that's correct.
We're talking about million,
yes.
Not billion.
Yes, that's correct.
Million. And here again, we are at the same location. And I'm not putting this blame, I'm not talking about a blame game. I'm not putting it on the UPND government at all, because they were not part of this contraction. Okay? And I, as Minister of Commerce and Industry, I was part of the cabinet that, shall we say, in inverted commas, were in office at the time when the debt of $750 million Eurobond was contracted. It was followed by $1 billion. Okay? Unfortunately for us at that time, Doc, it did not even come to cabinet. No, I was not even aware of it myself. And when I looked at it, I did not agree with it because we had not done our homework. We had not identified where that money was going to be invested. So similarly, right now, what we're doing now works out for us, and we have now to go forward to the next stage, and we don't take corrective measures to not have the situation occurring, then this is an unsuccessful situation. But maybe just to conclude from your question, the biggest challenge we have is any rescheduling means that you are postponing the day when you have to come to reckon with that particular date. Okay? And if that happens, you have failed to put the money that is being saved, and saved I'm putting in parentheses. Parentheses because it is not really a saving. It is not a saving at all. It is simply a postponement. The saving can only come from what you should have paid, but you are not going to pay now. The interest rates, for example, bringing it out maybe from 5% to 2.5%, or from 7% commercial rate, or 9%, and bringing it down to 2.5%, which has now been agreed as a framework. So unless you take corrective measures to cause a non-recurrence of the same problems in future, it means your child, your grandson, my great-grandson, your son to come is one you're asking to pay that debt. And the question I pose forward, is that the right thing for a responsible parent to do? And maybe we can start from there and we can discuss the matter further. I hope it is clarified this, and we can interrogate this.
So in a nutshell, how much approximately are we saving from the whole debt restructuring from the 6.3 billion?
All right. No, this is what I just said. We will not know that until we have completed the process of going to all these lenders. Because you have to agree. What has been agreed are the caps, what we call caps, the upper limits 2.5%, okay? 3-year grace period. And then we need to sit down now with individual creditors, our friends at Ministry of Finance, not us, but we look to them.
Yes.
We know this is their job, to go on now and negotiate. What was said by the Secretary to Treasury, because that's the part I attended, was that they expected to take weeks rather than months to go to all these creditors. As it turns out, we are fortunate, and we've been saying this, Doc. The biggest lender is China. All right, I think of that 6.3 billion, I think 4.1 billion is owed to China alone. So it may be easier to negotiate with China because it has got the largest debt. Then the other two is what you're going to discuss with the others. However, the benefit we can draw from this is that now that we've got this framework, the other lenders now, whether they are multilaterals or, for that matter, Eurobonds and others that are not included in this official committee, credit committee, they will now be guided also by the same. And according to the presentation they had, they told us that the other people are enthusiastic to try to come to terms. Now, you were just reading to us exchange rates. Now, because of that sentiment, what has happened to the kwacha? It seems to have improved. But you see, even last week it changed. Before even this announcement was made, it changed. And the difficulty you have when the currency is like that, the exchange rate is up and down, it's unstable. You can't plan ahead, okay? And today is 17. Remember, it was almost going to 20.
Yes.
And then it dropped towards 16. And then now it's gone up to 17. Then it changed again as a result of this announcement which the government had made. So I think what we need to do is to get the economy on a stable footing such that it's predictable. However, there are other issues at play apart from our debt. And it's not just Zambia, by the way. It is many other African countries because of the trade regime we have globally. But that now we can discuss. You are an economist, so we can go into that. I'm an accountant, so I can deal with those aspects. Okay? I don't know if I'm answering the question that you're going to pose. So we will not know the savings that are going to be achieved until this process has been completed. Okay. Make sense?
So looking at this debt restructuring process, there's been a lot of views.
Yes.
I personally have avoided
engaging
on this topic,
right,
because I think it has become a bit political and it's very difficult.
Right.
If you try to say the truth, the way you have put it, that we still need to go and talk, I was insulted.
Okay.
To be bitter, but I was just mentioning the truth that
Yeah.
the framework, the way you have explained it. So how should we avoid such? Because we had
Very good point.
Kaunda left 7 billion debt.
Mm-hmm.
We went through this HIPIC process, and I think the debt was forgiven. It was a long process, by the way.
Yes, it was a long process.
Yes, we remained with 500. I think RB left about 1.9 billion debt, somewhere there.
Yes.
Yes, then PF 17 billion, is it 13 billion?
Yeah, which came up, and then of course the 17 is the external, remember?
Yes.
It's not the entire.
It's not
yes. Yeah.
Now it's about 17. How do we avoid? Because the government continues, borrowing. We've had announcements of certain loans.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm embarrassed that you were being attacked in that particular manner, and it's been politicized. What I've explained to you, I'm talking as a professional.
Yes.
All right? I've been in this thing for a long time, very long time. My career has been 10 years in the mines. And during the days of UNIP, usually the president would ask, what is going to be the impact of the mining sector? Mm-hmm. And Honorable Hajipuk and myself were the senior Zambian accountants, so we would do the analysis. And we didn't have laptops, by the way, Doc.
Yes.
We were using our own little calculators and our training as accountants, okay? So we would do that, and then we would give, for example, the IMF would say, we want you to devalue by 20%. So the president would ask our chief executive, Mr. Francis Kaunda, the late Francis Kaunda, and he would say, okay, guys, what can you do the sums? So we'll do the sums because we knew what our debt was, and then we would work out the calculation. And what we would find is that we would report back to the chief executive officer, who would then discuss with the president. Okay, that's what we used to do. So all I'm saying is that, personally, I've been on this road, and together with some other colleagues, a long time. So I know exactly what the problem seems to be. Having said that, it's disappointing that people want to politicize it, because these problems have not arisen in just one government. Okay? That's why I gave credence and praise to HH's team that they are trying to get to grips with it. But even for them, if they make the same mistakes as have been done in the past, we'll be back into this. And this is the point I made earlier on. So how do we avoid this? First and foremost, the global trade regime, okay, the global trade regime does not favor developing countries. Mm-hmm. Okay? And you've written about this. Yes, you've written about this, and I do agree with you on that. The trade, I was Minister of Commerce, and we would meet now in Geneva, the World Trade Organization. We never could agree. The so-called Doha round, for those that are interested, the Doha round of negotiations on trade. And the idea was that we wanted to make sure that the rules by which every country played were fair. Now, developing countries, and African countries in particular, have traditionally been used as a source of raw materials. Generally speaking, the countries that have benefited from the resources of Africa has been Europe. In the later years, there has been Japan, and now, of course, China. Yeah. Okay? Because Africa is endowed with incredible quantity of natural resources, in particular metals and land and water, which enables sustenance. And beyond that, there is the farming land, huge amounts of farming land, including our own country here. But this is what the other people have used. How do they use it? We are constantly crying. We want investment from outside. We don't have enough money here. But what is value? What is value? At the moment, and I'm going to quote last year, I think 2022, the production from ZCCM, former ZCCM subsidiaries, the mines, okay, whether you're talking about FQM with Kansanshi and the new mines in Northwestern Province, or you're talking about Nchanga, you're talking about Shirabombwe, you're talking about Baluba in Wansha, you're talking about Nkana, all these, and Mufulira, of course, where I was financial controller. When you look at what is being produced, the figure that was given for last year is 800,000. 800,000. The previous year it was 883,000. Okay? Now, 883,000 at the price at that time was 10 million.
Yes.
Sorry,
$10,000
yes. Per metric ton. Mm-hmm. So if you take 883, you multiply that by 10,000, what does it give you? It gives you 8.8 billion.
Yes.
Right? Dollars. Who is taking that money? It has to be an investor.
Yes.
Who is the investor? The foreign companies. Mm-hmm. The very people you are saying we want the contract, we want the investors to come here. And this is my argument, and I keep saying this, and even to the current government, my advice is, I was part of the team that ran ZCCM. A lot of the work that was being done was by Zambians. I did not ask for the permission, and I apologize to my colleagues whose names I'll be able to mention, only to make the point. There are many of us who worked for ZCCM, as ZCCM, and who are still alive. Mm-hmm. We can train the upcoming generation to make sure that we own this. If you don't have the mines, which is your raw material coming from your ground, which you own, if you don't have the ownership, that's it. You can forget about any development at all, because that is where your foreign currency is coming from. And you need the foreign currency to buy those things that you are not producing locally. Give you some examples. We don't produce, most of the drugs we get are from India or from outside the country. How about the trucks, the Euclid trucks, the dump trucks that are used in the open pits on the copper belt? You know how much each one of them costs? In millions. So 100-ton overhaul truck is probably in the $6-12 million each. How do you pay for it? We are importing things from outside, right? And out of the stuff that you're importing, you have to pay it in dollars. In no other currency but dollars. If you are not in control of your copper, if you're not in control of your cobalt, if you're not in control of your nickel, if you're not in control of all the materials that are necessary in order to be able to now the current trend is electric vehicles, to create materials for the batteries and other requirements for electric vehicles, then how would you generate the foreign currency? This is what has happened now with FQM in Kansanshi. The country, through ZCCMIH, the Ministry of Finance, on behalf of the Zambian people, owned 20%. No dividend was being paid. Why? Because the shareholders, the 80% shareholders, were deciding. You are a minority shareholder at 20%. So you cannot compete with an 80%. If you take a vote, they'll always win. They are winning over the material that is in your ground, in your own country. And if you cannot control that, you've had it. Now, we have development needs. Right from the past, the colonial era, from 1906, the copper has been going out. It means that we are getting very little, except for the period that we had ZCCM, from 1982 up to 2000. So the development agenda we have, whether, Dr. Bazoka, it is about the roads in your home area, Noah, whether it is about the construction of a dual carriageway, whether it is talking about the development of dams, whether you are talking about power stations, those require money to be paid in dollars. Mm-hmm. Where are you going to get it from if you don't have control of the mines? How are you going to do it? And let's conclude on this particular matter. Currently, there is issues going on under KCM with Vedanta. There's issues that had been partly resolved under the PF government regarding Mopani. As we stand now, as I'm talking to you now, this government owns Mopani 100%. Why are you asking for an investor from outside when ZCCMIH has power to use its information on the copper that is in the ground, which belongs to the government, to go to the stock exchange, to borrow money in its own right for its own operations, 100%. You don't even need another person. And I can tell you, because I did that in ZCCM. Honorable Hachpuka did that in ZCCM. Gilbert Temba was at Mufulira. Emmanuel Mtati was at Mufulira and then went to Nkana. He became the managing director of Mopani. So it's not, yeah, you can talk about Obano Mtati, you can talk about many others that there are too many for me to mention here. It can be run. We can run the mines. A team can be put together and say, we want this thing to be done and done well on all the mines, and we can prove that Zambians are just as capable as possible. It's not like the days when we were working on the mines. I'll just give some names so that everybody can understand that we're not talking from without. The person who went to become the vice chairman of Anglo in South Africa is Norman Bazima. He was an accountant, was trained by ZCCM. When I was already group financial controller, Norman was on the copper belt. Let's go even come home. All right, Chile Shekapwepwe, the Director General of COMESA, all right, was in that group. There was Lumbwe, who has been running the accounting firm. They are there. These were students that were trained by ZCCM. Now they are all here. What is it that is so important, so impossible to run the mines? And if we don't have the expertise, we will hire the expertise. And that's the point I'm making. Why are you looking for a partner when you can run it yourselves? What is wrong with us?
Never given up on money.
No, but we need to continue to say that, because I don't want my grandchild to come and pay for debt when in fact it reflects at our incapacity to do that. And Doc, we should not stop doing. This is our country. We are the generation that God has blessed to be here to make a difference. As I'm talking to you, go to the rural areas. Go and look at the feeder roads. And with all due respect, the government of President Hakainde is touting so much the issue of CDF. CDF is not a new concept. It's been there in Parliament for a long time. What has made the difference is the increase. And in fact, we had been pushing for this for a long time. Why? In our particular case, we had been saying, we started this CDF anyway, okay? But now we said, let's have a district development fund, that sufficient resources are allocated under the Zambian budget. Even now, the provinces are allocated resources on an annual basis. Increase that amount. But to increase that amount, you must have a resource, you must have an income source, you must have an income stream. Where are you getting from if everything is being taken by the foreign investors? Not only that, a lot of this copper goes out as raw copper. I'm sure you've seen the trucks that are carrying billets. That's 1 ton billets, the huge lumps of copper put on light trucks. When I was Minister of Commerce, I made a comment, and I think there was a big reaction. Bob SICHINGA, I said we want to stop exporting this copper.
I think I was one of those that supported.
Yeah. We must stop exporting it in the raw form. What we should do is get the people that are buying that copper. Ask them, come here, we are going to have a partnership. We will take 51%, you can take 49%. We have the raw material, you have the expertise. You have the technology. Let's come and sit here. Let's put this thing together, all right? Because 51%, so you've got control, okay? 60%, 40%. 30% for the foreigner, 70% for ourselves. Why? Because we want more money, we want to generate that. And we take that copper and we process it. I was fortunate enough to have worked at Zamefa.
Yes,
right?
In
now, Zambia in Wansha.
Very proper company,
yeah.
That one.
1974, I was financial controller and I became chief accountant in 1970, end of 75 rather. And I'm telling you that out of the copper, at the time we were producing, as ZCC, we were producing 500,000 metric tons. Zamefa was using 5,000 tons out of 500,000 tons. And if we make it our duty that we, and we are fortunate, Zambia produces one of the best qualities of copper, 99.96%. Okay, great stuff, good for electric vehicles. So we say to the Chinese, we say to some other companies, whoever we bring, and we say, right, let's have this partnership. We've got the raw material, we've got the labor, we've got the place. Let's now go do this together. Okay, you take your 40%, 30%, 49%, whatever it might be, we agree on, but not less, so that we have got a controlling interest. Okay, we say now we're going to do value addition. Value added. Everything we send out is going to be processed. For this reason, as Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry, I have now started negotiating with the mining company. We met in Livingstone and we agreed, let's do that. So I wanted to use, on behalf of the Zambian government, I wanted to use Carway and Skyways. Why is Carway and Skyways where we would locate these factories? Is because the infrastructure is already in place. You've got telecommunications, you've got roads already in place, you've got the buildings already in place. So all those industries that can be used for value addition, whether you're making geysers, whether you're making coils, whether you're making chargers, whether you're talking about contacts for the electric vehicles and so on and so forth, all those we're going to make them here locally. So when we're sending out, we're going to send out finished commodity. You know what it will do? Instead of the 8.8 billion we talked about sending out copper, 880,000 copper, you know what we'll get? We're going to get 80 billion. 10 times that value. What can 80 billion do for us? You can pay this debt within a short space of time. You don't even need the grace period. You want to clear it immediately. 88 billion times because you're doing value addition. Where is the money coming from? We go to the market. We're going to tell them this is the mines we have. This is the copper reserves that we have. At Gongola, for example, is one of the biggest reserves. Because the ore body we're using here in Zambia is the same ore body that Congo has. We're sharing that ore body. On the Congo side, they say Kolwezi. On the Zambian side, it's Solwezi. So I'm just saying, look, we need to have a vision. We need to say to ourselves, we are going to get ourselves out of this mess. We are going to borrow just like those mining companies that come here, borrow. They don't take money from their pockets. They go to the market and borrow using the information that is provided about our mines. So what is so wrong about us doing it? And there are enough of us. We can do this. I can tell you that. Doc, I am telling you that you give me this assignment, we're going to turn the country around. 5 years, we'll turn it around. So what I'm saying is that we need to be visionary. We cannot forego what God has granted to us. And this is how we should go about it. And I'm just talking about copper. How about cobalt? When I just joined the mines under RCM, the first assignment I did was to do the Chambeshi cobalt plant. Was the first job I did. All right? I went to Chambeshi, and we looked at that project. The capacity of that project was 4,000 metric tons of cobalt. And cobalt is a byproduct. It's not even something you mine on its own. It's a byproduct of copper. And the amount that was needed for that was $6 million US. I borrowed that money. We borrowed that money from DBZ. Mm-hmm. The payback was 3 months. The man was paid back. 3 months. Because there's so much demand for cobalt. It's a fantastic commodity, and it's a byproduct. So you're not spending extra money. And I'm telling you about things that I have gone through. I'm not doing theory. I'm talking to you about practical situations. So this is how we are going to get out of this, by increasing our foreign exchange availability. Therefore, the exchange rate, and we've been there before, Doc, when you were still young, both of you. When I was going to train as an accountant in the UK, in 1971, the exchange rate was $1, right? So 1 kwacha to $1.12. 1 kwacha was worth $1.12. So we've been there before. I mean, it's not this, you can check these figures. I'm giving you these figures because I remember them very well. I'm an accountant. This is my job. So you're asking me, how do we get out of this? How don't we repeat this? First and foremost, you've got to have increased income streams coming into the country and not externalizing. So that's the first point that you're going to need. Increase value added. Borrow the money for the moment. But when you borrow that money, you're going to make it very clear that this is going to go to this particular purpose. Not the stealing that goes going on in PF. And I want to tell you, there was a lot of stealing going on. We cannot allow that. We should never allow that.
So I wanted to ask about the same. We've borrowed about 13, 14, 17 billion. Where is the money going to?
Well, that's a good question. That's the point I'm making to you right now. I think that for real value that the country got is probably, I'm giving you a very close guess, and as a forensic auditor, this is how I trained as an accountant. I was doing audit work. My reading is as follows. About 40%, 30 to 40% was stolen through dubious deals, paying for things that were not there. People going out collecting money from the people they are buying from. So they pad the prices. We pay more than we should by 100%. So as an item that should cost us $1 million is costing us $2 million. And the difference is given through the creditors, the people that are supplying the item, people that are in middlemen, create fake companies. That's what happens. That is what we have to sort out. That we have to take that out completely, so that we are actually ourselves able to service what we need without relying on bilateral arrangements. Sometimes they'll just give you $3 million, $1 million, just to buy. It's called soft diplomacy. Okay? So, but we can generate that ourselves. And I don't know why we keep thinking somebody else from another country, from another world, is coming to solve our problems for us. It does not happen. It does not. We have to do this as a business deal. We have to say, this is what we have. You want this from us? This is the arrangement we're going to have. We must take a tough stance. And I like the Kenyan president. He's doing exactly that. That's exactly what we should say. We want to be we're equal partners. When we sit on that table, equal partners. We can go to the Wall Street. We can go to Singapore. We can go to London. We can borrow against what we have in the ground. That's our wealth. Why can't we do that? And then value add locally so that our children, the 7.5 million boys and girls who do not have jobs, can find jobs. And I'm talking about real jobs, not selling at counters of fast food places. No, we're talking about real substantive jobs. And most of our training, Doc, you lecturers, you are training these children for white-collar jobs. Mm-hmm. No, we want blue-collar jobs. We want engineers. We want metallurgists. We want chemical engineers. We want to, yes, we should produce some lawyers. Yes, we should produce some accountants. Yes, we should all do all this. And by the way, the accountants, when we took over, when we came into office ourselves as accountants, when we qualified under Indico, we were some of the first. There were no more than 10 Zambian accountants. Honorable Chibuka was number 5, I was number 6. Dr. George Sokota was number 3. There was Wamnyema, there was Wakunguma, there was another ahead of that, and Grace Langwa, the late Grace Langwa, was the subsequent managing director of Indico. They were the first ones, they were the 4 of them, right? And then came us. Honorable Chibuka was number 5, I was number 6, we qualified the same day, all right, 1974. So what I'm saying to you is that, and today, under ZICAS, which we set up, George Sokota ran it very, very successfully, we have more than 10,000 qualified certified accountants in this country. So it can be done. Nobody can challenge me on that. You can go and check the figures. Uh-huh. So what I'm saying is that don't expect somebody from another country, from another continent, from another globe to come and solve your problems. We got to do that. It's our job to do that ourselves. I don't know if I'm responding to the question.
Yes. Director, maybe you can show us some messages, if any. Director says no. You can interact with us by sending text messages on the numbers that are appearing on the screen. Unfortunately, today we cannot call through because we're having some technical challenges, but next week the phone lines will be back. Honorable, people are complaining that there's no money, there's no liquidity.
Yes.
Some people are complaining that there's a lot of victimization, the police, the what, a lot of arrest warrants, Munia Zulu here, there. The SG of your former ruling party has run away. How does that affect the business cycle? Why do you think that is happening?
Well, first and foremost, I won't discuss any specific cases.
Yes,
I think we'll discuss it generally. Mm-hmm. I have said to you, just take the Auditor General's report. During the years that PF has been in office, okay, there was a lot of stealing going on. I've just explained to you how this was being done. There were some good things that were done, but usually they were done because it was used as a method to take money out. Okay, some of the projects that I think were very, very important for us to do. The expansion of the roads here in Osaka, I think, was a very good thing. But it was being done because through those contracts, people were stealing money. Okay? And certainly the Indian company, I mean, I was part of the team that went to India to negotiate for that, where we went with Vice President Guy Scott, and we negotiated this. There was the issue, it was started in MMD, but we actually actualized it, the issue of the 650 clinics.
Yes,
right? That was one of them. Then we talked about the roads, and when we discussed that with them, it was the Exim Bank, because India was also playing soft diplomacy. So they did, and I think they've done a good job. I think that you cannot take that away from the government. It was well intended. Whether it was done for the correct price or not is another issue. And mostly it was cadres. Give your cadres and so on and so on. After the money has been, give dubious things. Even competencies were not even looked at. That's one issue that you're talking about. And I, as an accountant, I, as chairman of having served as chairman of public accounts, economic affairs and labor, I can tell you this much. These audit reports were so clear, and I thank Auntie Fungula and even Dr. Stebe now for their candid presentation of those facts. And I don't think we should allow that to go on. There was a lot of stealing. And some of the cases that are going on, I think, are evidence of what took place, without mentioning specifics. So, we need to address that. Our attitude towards discipline and we call it financial discipline or fiscal discipline, is important for us to change that narrative. We need to change that. We must take responsibility that nobody else is going to do for us. And each of the people that come into government, whoever they are, must not come into government with the idea that they're going to steal or that now there's an opportunity for them to become rich. And there are many temptations. Make no mistake. Even the current government, why are you buying fertilizer at $1,500 per metric ton? When I was Minister of Agriculture, we bought that fertilizer, that same fertilizer, at $388 per metric ton. How is that possible? You are paying $1,500. What happened? It's obvious that somebody's stealing. Come on. Let's be honest about it. Okay? So, that's why you've got this middleman. During my tenure, we went directly to the supplier. We saved money. $388 per metric ton compared to 1,500 metric ton. How many times are you talking about? This is coming almost to 4 times, 5 times the amount that is being paid. Why would you want to do that? And yes, there are temptations. People come and say, "Oh, Minister, can we share the difference and so on and so forth?" They'll do that, but it's up to us to have the integrity to say, well, "I'm not going to do that." Okay? And I can tell you, these are facts I'm giving to you. It happens all the time. So it's important for us to understand that the moment that one person may be rich, and most of that money is kept outside the country. Mostly now the big story is Dubai. Keep the money in Dubai. Oh yeah, it will develop Dubai. It will not develop Zambia. Simple. Wherever you keep your money, that's what the Bible says, eh? Where your money is, that's where your heart is, eh?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what happens. So I'm saying that we need to take responsibility as citizens of this country, even those of us who go into leadership. It's very, very important for us to do that. So we will not be sitting here, Doc, Noah, talking about rescheduling, because there will be no debt in the first place to reschedule.
Honorable, when we talk about public sector financial management reforms,
yes,
especially when it comes to fiscal policy,
yes,
what would be some of the propositions so that we never really go back to this position that we are in?
Well, there is no replacement for integrity of the individual players. There is no replacement. Okay? One of the things that some of the things that I've been suggesting, let me just share this with you. One of the things I've said is that if you look at the budget, and Doc, I'm sorry I did not bring the big budget, because it's a yellow book, it's a big yellow book, and I think that's last time I brought it here, and we still know. It's a big, document, 2,000 pages. How many people understand that?
Very few.
Very few people understand that. But it's also a mixture. There is capital expenditure or development expenditure. There's also government management. I've always said, separate the two. And I'm talking as an accountant. Separate the two. Have a separate budget for development. Have a separate budget for managing the government. I'm talking about the administration of the government. Salaries and recurrent departmental charges, RTCs and so on and so forth. Separate that. Put it aside. Then develop, Doc, you are an economist. Develop an index, a development index. Find out what is the development that has taken place in each of the constituencies or in each of the districts. What are the shortfalls? You may find that the one has got 2 hospitals, the other one has no hospital. We need to balance that to make sure that this is equitable to all the parties. And then say, for each district, this is our budget. It will be done through the provincial budget for development, separate. And that amount will not be touched other than for the projects that we have. And please, no seminar after seminar to take it in terms of allowances. No, that is capital expenditure, capital expenditure. Then let's come to government recurrent expenditure. That's where you can say, now this one, we want so many teachers, whether it is 60,000 teachers, whether it is the doctor, medical personnel, and so on. They will come into the government management budget. So that you don't have a situation like we have now. When there's a problem with the shortages of resources, you stop the projects, okay? And because you have to pay the wages, you've got to pay the salaries, you've got to pay your remuneration, okay? If you separate the two and institute laws which say you cannot do this, you cannot exceed this. For example, even the borrowing that government has to make, it will not exceed a certain percentage. How much is it? in relation to the GDP, the gross domestic product. If you look at it, I'm sorry I did not bring the booklet with me.
Will the amendment to
you have to amend the laws.
The Bank of Zambia Act, the recent amendment, help with the point you just raised?
There are several things. The Bank of Zambia and so on and so forth. I'll come to Bank of Zambia in a moment. But I'm talking about government. Once that money has been allocated, it has been allocated. And today with technology, you can control it even from the center. You don't even have to say, we sent so much money to you and you misused it. No. You can control it. We'll only give you this money once you've given us an account of what we gave you last time. Finished. Simple, straightforward. You've got a program that does that. You know, whenever there's anything that has been expended that was not provided for, red flag. On the computer itself. Okay? So, what I'm saying is that there is no replacement to integrity, fiscal discipline, and also financial discipline. All these laws are governed by people. They're implemented by people. If they don't have integrity, we'll end up with the same story over and over. Okay? So, but we need also to have the facilitation. The laws must be there so that the individuals will be punished. So this issue that you've raised, Doc, that people are being arrested and so on, I'll not talk about the so-called political issues. I'll talk about the things that are financial. Okay? How does a member of parliament buy a helicopter? From what?
Or the recent scandal at Ministry of Finance.
Or recent, yeah. The person is getting an allowance at the Ministry of Finance itself, which should be the one that is supposed to be instituting the discipline. They will get in form of allowances. They will get 4 times their salary. How is that possible? And they're taking money from the vote, the vote that's supposed to be capital. That's what they're using. If they are using that capital money, it means the capital projects can't be done because you're using it for. That's how we have ended up with so many houses in Jalala, which people can't account for. I mean, I was minister, my salary was 25,000, and it's not even a secret, 25,000 was my salary per month. How would I buy a helicopter? How would I put up a house in 6 months? How is that possible? I've got children that are going to school. How is that possible, Doc? I mean, you tell me. And even, how do you even get to the stage where you're going to ask somebody, what is need for me as minister? How are you going to do that? And that's what happens. What is need for me? What percentage is it for me? How do you administer? Cameras are brought, phones are brought, cash is brought to tempt it because they know that ministers will fall for it. How about the buyers? Procurement guys? How about permanent secretaries? How about arms that never come? So you're asking me how we do it. There is no replacement. And to be honest with you, if I was the president, I would have so many people locked up. I would. To put a stop to this, there's too much white-collar crime in this country. No regard for anything else. It's got to be me and myself only. It's not, we cannot build a nation like that. No, not at all, Doc. You know that as well as I do. Just read the Auditor General's reports. You'll see it there. Right now. Why is government not taking action when Auditor General's reports are given?
But we still have recurring same issues over and over.
Yes, it is.
When you talk about Ministry of Finance,
Ministry of Finance itself, if Ministry of Finance is doing that, then what hope do we have? But what I'm saying is that we've got to be very, very firm. And this starts from the top. There are things that cannot be done without the president being involved. There are things that can be done without the ministers being involved. There are things that cannot be done without the PS being involved. There are things that cannot be done unless the buyer is involved. So what I'm saying to you is that it's up to us. We have to institute policies, policies that safeguard this. We cannot pay them well. I mean, members of parliament, they are not badly paid, but they don't get allowances for them to tour their areas. So everybody complains. Okay? If a member of parliament, and I don't know how much is being paid at the moment, but let's assume for a moment they are paid, I don't know, 70,000 quite every month. Okay? I think it's a reasonable amount compared to what many people earn at the moment. Okay?
Very reasonable.
We should also say to the President, this is your salary. And remember, after this, Mr. President, the nation is going to look after you. We'll give you servants. We'll buy you vehicles every 5 years. You can have a tour to go outside the country. You've got the cleaners at the house. You've got the gunners at the house. You've got the drivers at the house. You've got a personal assistant. Okay? You know why you're the personal assistant to the president and so on and so forth. In other words, he's got a team. Sometimes, the figure was going to about 15 people that the former president was entitled. Why would you steal? When you are not, you're guaranteed, and will build your house, by the way. If you're Speaker, will build your house. Do the same thing for Chief Justice. Do the same thing for the Vice President. And then if they steal, you can say, wait a minute, what's going on? And when they're very skillfully concealed. So we end up with problems that we have right now. So you've got to have forensic auditors that go in there and say, wait a minute, why did you do this?
So we really need to work on corporate governance at national level.
Yeah.
Good corporate governance.
Yeah, no, but also we should punish people when they steal. We should do that. We should not allow a few people to mess up. Look at where we are now. Why are we doing this scheduling of this debt? Why? Why do we have this level of debt? Maybe we should have done more roads. We should have sorted out the Ndola Lusaka Road. We should have sorted out the Lusaka Livingston Road. They are not in good shape. We still have projects that we started with President Sata that have not been done. How about the Mumba Kasempa Road? It's not even tarred. Look at the state of
the distance between Lusaka and northwestern province by
it would still immediate,
yes.
But also right now, all this copper that's coming from northwestern province, how is it going out of the country? If you go to Namibia, where do you go? Which is the route you use? You've got to cross at Lukulu.
Yes.
Lukulu, you come and join near Kaoma. Kaoma, you then go to Mungu. What is the state of the road?
Very bad.
It's in a very bad state. How are you going to do it? It increases the costs. Who has been looking after that road? Take the Great North Road, leading us to Dar es Salaam. Have you been on that road?
Very bad.
So, and people are spending their time on politics of tribe and all. There is a country to look after. Oh, I'll give jobs to my relatives and so on. They do. They do. I mean, you just look around you now. Just look around you. And then the jobs don't get done. Are we surprised? The fault lies not in our stars, but in ourselves. It does. So, the rescheduling of the debt is coming about because we have mismanaged as a people. Whatever the government is. But development also requires a lot of money. And many people have talked about UNIP. I think UNIP did a fantastic job.
Yes.
They did a fantastic job. Really, we have lessons to learn from them. A president that dies with 8,000 dollars in their account. What else did you want a man to do? Not to earn? Not look after his family? I can safely say to you, I was a founder member of MMD. MMD did a bad job. MMD did a bad job. After a year, I resigned from MMD because the very things we had condemned under UNIP were happening in that. We tried, a little bit of improvement under Manawasa, but then we ended up with, again, after that, there was something else. Even the MMD government that came into office, they're talking about having sorted out there was GDP growth, but there was no development. If you're not sorting out the infrastructure, the capital expenditure, how do you expect the country to develop? No schools. We're doing the schools now. Why? Don't we know that the growth of this, the population growth of this country is 2.3%? Don't we know that? Doc, you're an economist.
Yes, we do.
No, we do. How many children start school every year? 320,000? We know. How many children don't have jobs right now? 7.5 million? After the age of 18 to 35, you're the youth, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Who's taking care of that? How many? Every child. There was many children. Some of my children, my relatives, you were a minister, uncle, grandpa. Can you find me a job? Where am I going to find a job? We are not creating those opportunities for the children. And if we did value addition and we let our children go and do blue-collar jobs, we will create those jobs using our copper, which is in the ground, which God has given to us. And we've got the mentality and the wisdom to be able to implement that, not to put money in our pockets and in Dubai. So that's where I stand. Even this exchange rate, I can tell you to go back to 1-to-1 with the dollar, if we manage it well. But also the African countries, the developing countries in general, do not have a fair deal on selling their raw materials. Look at Congo. There is no other country in the world that has got the wealth of Congo. Whether you're talking about the timber, whether you're talking about cobalt, whether you're talking about diamonds, whether you're talking about gold, whether you're talking about molybdenum, whether you're talking about cobalt, whether you're cobalt, everywhere you go in Congo, there's cobalt. So why is Congo in war? Why is Congo poor? Why are the children dying? Why do we have these wars in Goma? They're instituted by those that want these raw materials from us. So you ask me that question. This should be our responsibility. Whether it is President Hakainde, whether it is President Lungu, whether it's President Sata, whoever, whoever will come after us must be focusing on this. Yes, there are unfavorable relationships that are with the developing countries and like Zambia. But it's for us to fight it. We must unite as AU. We must unite as region, SADC. 73% of our trade is with South Africa. This country, foreign trade, 73% is with South Africa. When I was Minister of Commerce, we started a fight, and President Zuma said, "Oh, this is the stubborn minister from Zambia." Because I told them, we're not going to carry on this nonsense. We want equitable trade. That's what the protocol says, equitable trade. And I said, we're not going to have this going on, sir. It has to change. So, but we don't even have a law. As we stand now, I'm talking to you, there is no law on our books on value addition in this country. None. So I hope that answers the questions that you have raised.
Honorable, we can go ahead, and thank you very much for coming. I think this was, I've learned a lot, and I would like to say that we need to come and discuss agriculture.
Yes.
Yes, beyond what we have, the limiting topic that we have discussed. Well, because you almost make me feel like crying.
Yeah, you see, I'm telling you this, 84% of our rural population are dependent on agriculture. You've got to sort it out. We've got to sort out FISIP. FISIP is the biggest government project we have. And we cannot do without it. That's what has survived Zambia. But we can do it more efficiently. Instead of people there are people that take this and go and sell. It's intended to help the people to improve their productivity and so on and so forth. That's what we should be doing. So yeah, I would like us to have that topic, and we can go through that. And I'll take you through and show you just how much change we can make.
The issue on value addition reminds me of an article I was reading on China, where big cities were built. Created just by taking an industry.
I told you about copper cities.
Yes.
In Kabwe and in Dollar Skyways.
Exactly.
Yeah, infrastructure is already there. What else do you want? Road is there, rail is there, telecommunications is there, people already have houses, the water network is there, right? Electricity is there. That's what we should be doing.
Honorable, it was a pleasure.
They're called low-line foods. Yeah.
You are watching Economic Briefcase on Cabinet TV. Our guest today was Honorable Bob SICHINGA, former Minister of Commerce, former Minister of Agriculture, former Member of Parliament, Group Chief Financial Officer, Financial Controller for ZCM. Basically, a man that needs no introduction. And I know his brother very, very well. He just doesn't know that from once. Mr. Japao, it was also a pleasure to co-host with you. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.